Cancel it. Every last thing. My father's voice cut through the banquet hall like a blade, his tone dripping with disdain. The room fell into stunned silence. Decorators froze mid-step, waiters stopped placing silverware, and even the florist clutched her bouquet tighter. I stood at the edge of the room, clutching my veil in trembling fingers as his words sank into my chest like poison. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. My mother's heels clicked against the marble floor as she marched. Toward me, her lips curled into a cruel smirk. "Do you think anyone would waste a dime on you?" She sneered, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "You're not beautiful enough, not polished enough. No man would spend a penny to marry. You, Emily." Heat burned behind my eyes, but I forced myself to swallow the lump in my throat. Every decorator, every caterer, every stranger standing in that half-prepared hall stared at me, waiting for my reaction, waiting to see me break. But instead, I inhaled slowly, tightened my grip on my veil, and said one thing, quietly, but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "We'll see." My father scoffed so loudly it echoed off the walls. "We'll see what? That pathetic man you married can't even pay his rent. You think he'll save you from this embarrassment?" He turned to the vendors with a wave of his hand. "Get out. Pack it up. Show's over. There's no wedding reception here." I felt their pitying stares like knives against my skin. My cheeks flushed red, my chest tightened, but I didn't beg. I didn't cry. Instead, I turned on my heel, walked out of that hall, and left their laughter bouncing off the marble floors behind me. That night, in our small apartment, I sat on the edge of the bed. My husband, Nathan, tightened his tie in front of the mirror, his reflection calm but his eyes burning with the kind of anger he rarely showed. He turned to me. "Emily, what did they say to you?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. My throat ached. Then, finally, I whispered, "They said you can't afford me, that you'd never prove them wrong." Nathan's jaw clenched. He walked over, knelt in front of me, and placed his hands on mine. His voice was low, steady, but I could feel the storm behind it. "Emily, I don't care what they think, but if they want to measure my love in money—" He exhaled sharply, his fists curling. "Then tomorrow, they'll see just how wrong they are." I blinked at him, confused. "Nathan, what are you talking about? We don't—" But he stood, grabbed his jacket, and walked out without another word. The next morning, I was pouring coffee when my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown caller. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Miss Parker?" It was the manager of the Grandview Ballroom. His tone was oddly formal, nervous almost. "I'm calling to confirm. Your husband just purchased the entire hall, paid in full. Every vendor's been rehired. The reception is not only back on, it's yours exclusively. No one else can even book it for the year." The mug slipped from my hands and shattered against the tile. My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the counter to steady myself as his words echoed in my ears. "Your husband just purchased the entire hall." And in that moment, I realized my parents hadn't just underestimated Nathan. They had no idea who he really was. The next morning, the air felt different. I walked through the revolving glass doors of the Grandview Ballroom with Nathan at my side. His stride was calm, unhurried, but every step carried a weight that pulled all eyes toward him. Staff members, who just yesterday had looked at me with pity, now straightened their uniforms, bowing their heads as though acknowledging someone they couldn't afford to offend. My parents were already inside. Dad was standing near the entrance with his phone in hand, his voice sharp as he barked orders to no one in particular. Mom hovered close, whispering something cruel I didn't need to hear to know it was about me. When they saw us, my father smirked, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "Well, well," he said loudly, making sure the staff could hear. "Look who crawled back. I hope you're not here to beg me to undo the cancellation." Nathan didn't flinch. He slipped his hand into mine, his grip steady, grounding me. "No," he said evenly, his tone calm but commanding. "We're here to take a look at what belongs to us now." My father's eyebrows shot up, and for the first time, he looked thrown off. "What nonsense are you—" Before he could finish, the manager appeared holding a thick folder. He cleared his throat nervously, his eyes darting between Nathan and my father. "Mr. Parker, the paperwork you signed last night has been processed. The Grandview Ballroom, along with all upcoming bookings, is now under your ownership." Hush fell across the hall. Staff exchanged shocked glances. My mother's face drained of color. My father let out a laugh. Too sharp, too loud. "Impossible," he snapped. "This man can't even buy a decent suit, and you're telling me he bought this place? Do you have any idea what it's worth?" Nathan's jaw tightened, but his expression didn't break. "I don't need you to understand," he said quietly, his voice like steel. "I just need you to see what happens when you underestimate the wrong people." My father's phone slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. He didn't pick it up. He just stood there, staring at Nathan as if trying to reconcile the man before him with the image he'd mocked only a day earlier. Mom finally found her voice. "You're lying. You're playing some trick to embarrass us." The manager shook, his head quickly, sweating under her glare. "Ma'am, there's no mistake. The hall is theirs. The contract is signed, sealed, and paid in full." I turned to my parents then, feeling the sting of every insult, every cruel word they'd thrown at me. But instead of anger, I let silence do the work. My gaze held theirs until my father shifted uncomfortably, as though for the first time, he saw me not as his daughter to belittle, but as someone who no longer needed him. Nathan squeezed my hand and whispered just for me, "This isn't about showing them. This is about showing you. You're worth everything, Emily." Something inside me cracked then, not with pain, but with release. For so long, I'd believed their lies, swallowed their cruelty, let their voices define my worth. But standing there in that grand hall, with Nathan beside me and the entire staff looking to us for direction, I realized I'd been free of them the moment I walked out last night. My father tried one last time to claw back control. He stepped forward, lowering his voice into the dangerous calm I'd grown up fearing. "Listen to me, Emily. Do you really think this man can keep up with us? Do you think he belongs in our world? Money doesn't make you one of us." I stared at him, and for the first time I felt no fear. My voice was steady, clear. "No, Dad. Money doesn't make someone worthy, but character does, and Nathan has more of that than you'll ever understand." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. My mother's lip trembled, her eyes flicking between the staff who no longer looked at her like they once did, and the man she'd mocked who now owned the ground beneath her feet. Finally, Nathan broke it. He looked at the manager. "Resume. The reception. We'll host it tonight, exactly as it was planned. But this time—" He glanced at my parents, his gaze sharp as glass. "Make sure the guest list is different." The manager nodded quickly, jotting down notes. My father's face twisted. "You can't exclude us. We're her family." Nathan turned to him, his tone still calm, but his words hit harder than any shout could. "Family doesn't humiliate their own blood in front of strangers. Family doesn't measure their daughter's worth in dollars. You gave up that title the moment you opened your mouth yesterday." I felt a chill race through me as the weight of his words settled. My father had always been the one with the last word, but not anymore. When Nathan wrapped his arm around me and led me further into the hall, I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to. The Grandview Ballroom glittered that night in a way it never had before. Chandeliers blazed overhead, crystal glasses shimmered on the tables, and the air buzzed with the hum of whispers. Word had already spread. The reception that had been canceled was not only back on, it was bigger, brighter, and owned outright by the groom himself. Nathan stood tall at my side in a charcoal suit that seemed to transform him entirely. His quiet strength radiated through the room, commanding respect without a single word. Guests who once looked at me with pity now stared with something closer to awe. I could feel it in their eyes. The balance of power had shifted. And then the doors opened. My parents walked in. Gasps rippled through the hall. They weren't invited, but of course they came anyway. My father's stride was stiff, his jaw locked tight. My mother followed behind, her smile brittle, painted on like armor. They tried to project dignity, but I could see the cracks. They looked like intruders in a place that no longer belonged to them. Nathan's grip on my hand tightened. "Do you want me to have them removed?" he whispered. I swallowed, heart pounding. "No. Let them see." The music hushed. Conversations dipped to silence as my father raised his voice for all to hear. "This spectacle," he announced, his tone thick with contempt, "is nothing but a farce. My daughter has been fooled by a man who thinks money makes him important. Don't mistake a show of cash for true class." His words cut sharp, but instead of silence, a murmur of disapproval spread through the guests. People were tired of his arrogance, and they weren't afraid to show it. I stepped forward before Nathan could. My voice was steady, though my heart thundered in my chest. "Dad, you canceled this reception in front of everyone. You called me too expensive to marry off. You said no man would spend a penny on me. Look around. Look at what Nathan has done. He didn't just pay for this night. He bought the hall that you tried to take away. And you still stand here, acting like you're the one in control?" His face darkened, his pride battling against the truth hanging heavy in the air. "I was protecting you," he spat. "This man, he's nothing more than a pretender. He doesn't belong in circles like this." Nathan finally stepped forward. His voice wasn't raised, but it carried across the room like thunder rolling over a plain. "You've spent your whole life believing money makes you better than others. You flaunted it, used it to shame your own daughter, to crush her spirit. But let me tell you something." He paused, letting the silence hang. "It doesn't matter how much you have if you've got no heart." The room held its breath. My mother's mask cracked. She stepped forward, her voice trembling now. "Emily, don't you see? He's turning you against us. We're your parents. We raised you. You can't just erase us." For the first time, I felt anger rise. Not the helpless kind I'd swallowed for years, but a fierce, clean fire that gave me strength. "You didn't raise me," I said, my voice cutting through the hall. "You belittled me. You made me feel worthless. And when I found someone who saw my worth, you tried to destroy it. That's not love. That's control. And I'm done being controlled." A stunned silence followed. Then, like a wave, applause broke out across the room. Guests clapped, some even rising to their feet. My parents stood frozen in the spotlight, their power crumbling with every clap, every cheer that wasn't for them. My father's face flushed red. He tried to shout above the noise, but his words were swallowed by the sound of celebration. My mother tugged at his arm, whispering frantically, but his pride wouldn't let him move. They stood there, drowning in the humiliation they had once tried to pour onto me. Nathan slipped his arm around my waist, pulling me close. "You don't have to fight them anymore," he whispered. "They've already lost." I looked up at him, my eyes stinging, not with pain this time, but with a strange mix of relief and triumph. For the first time, I felt free. But then my father did something I didn't expect. He straightened his shoulders and forced a laugh, loud and sharp. "Fine," he barked. "Enjoy your little victory tonight. But don't forget, you're still my daughter. You'll never escape what I've built." His words were hollow, a desperate reach for control, and everyone in that room knew it. Nathan turned to him one last time. His voice was calm, but it landed like a final blow. "You're right. She'll never escape what you've built, because she's already building something better. Without you." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents, for once, had no answer, and when they finally turned and walked out, their retreat felt heavier than any defeat I had ever witnessed. When the heavy ballroom doors closed behind my parents, the atmosphere shifted. The tension that had lingered in every corner dissolved into celebration. The band struck up again, guests raised their glasses, and laughter replaced the sharp whispers that once cut me down. Nathan guided me onto the dance floor. As the music swelled, I caught sight of the same vendors who'd pitied me yesterday, now smiling, nodding, treating me as though I belonged here. Not because of money, but because I had stood tall when it mattered. He leaned close as we danced, his voice low so only I could hear. "Emily, do you feel it? This is yours, not theirs. Not anyone else's. Yours." Tears stung my eyes, but this time they weren't from humiliation. They were from the weight of finally being free. "For so long I believed them," I whispered. Every cruel word, every time they told me I was nothing. Nathan's eyes locked onto mine, steady and fierce. "You're not nothing. You're everything." Around us the crowd cheered, but I was caught in that moment. For the first time in my life, I realized my worth had never been theirs to measure. The night rolled on with speeches, laughter, and joy. But as the hours passed, I stepped out onto the balcony for air. The city stretched below me, lights glowing, traffic humming, life moving forward no matter what. And in that view, I saw a reflection of my own future. Bright, unstoppable. Nathan joined me, slipping his coat around my shoulders. "You were incredible tonight," he said softly. I shook my head, a small smile forming. "No, Nathan. We were. You showed me that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about standing by someone when everyone else turns their back." He brushed a strand of hair from my face. "And you showed me that strength isn't about money or titles. It's about not letting anyone steal your voice." Silence fell between us, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that felt full, powerful, like we didn't need words to understand the bond we shared. Inside, the party roared on, but for me, the real victory wasn't in owning the hall or proving my parents wrong. It was standing here with Nathan, knowing I'd finally taken my life back. The following days only cemented that truth. Word spread quickly about what happened at the reception. My parents, once feared and admired, became the subject of hushed gossip. Their arrogance had been laid bare, their cruelty undeniable. And while they scrambled to salvage their image, I no longer cared. For years, I had chased their approval. Now, I didn't need it. I had my own path, my own strength, and a husband who didn't just love me. He believed in me. On the morning, after the reception, Nathan and I walked hand in hand into the ballroom again. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the polished floors. It was empty, silent, waiting. Nathan turned to me with a quiet smile. "What do you want to do with this place, Emily? It's yours now." I paused, letting the weight of that question sink in. For once, it wasn't about what my parents expected, or what others thought I should do. It was about me. I smiled, feeling a strength I'd never known before. "I want to open it up. Not just for weddings, but for people who were told they weren't enough. I want this hall to be a place where no one ever feels like I did. Nathan's eyes shone with pride. Then that's exactly what we'll do. And as I looked around the grand hall, once the stage of my humiliation, now the foundation of my redemption, I felt a surge of peace. This wasn't just the end of one chapter, it was the beginning of everything.